Hey guys, hi and welcome back to another video of Critic. I know it's been a long time that I did not upload any videos, and the reason for not uploading the videos was because I was not doing well and it took me a good amount of time to recover. But I definitely promise you I shall upload videos more often. So before creating this video, there was a lot of time that went between my practicing sessions, and that's how it got delayed. So now I think I'm kind of fine-tuned or got my rhythm back in terms of practicing drawing. So I thought, why not start from where I left? So yes, there were many people who had shared their artwork for me to review them or for me to give them a critic. So I shall definitely do that in this video. And as you know that I shall be posting your artwork on my Instagram page. So I will leave all the links in the description box. And my sincere apologies to those people who have shared their artwork for review. I know that was supposed to happen back in April, but it somehow it got delayed. So my genuine apologies. So without wasting any further time, let's jump into the video and talk about the art review.
Here's our first critic, Omkar Vasa. The first thing that I see in this drawing, and what I liked about this drawing, that he has faithfully done this by adding a lot of details, um, giving a lot of ample of time, putting a lot of efforts, and patiently fulfilling all these details out there. Are you see there are many details, fine details out there. It's kind of a design pattern that I can see here that's going on. So it's very nicely done. I really liked it. Talking about the improvement areas, Uh, the first thing that I immediately noticed was this picture looks into two values. One is white and one is black. If you notice, there are too many. If you notice this, there are too many blacks outgoing and white. Of course, there are some middle values, but that is very less. So, if we go by the value scale, if the value scale that I have here is, you see, there is a lot of value range that is going from uh, we have 3 to 4 set in the light values, then 3 to 4 set in the middle values, and 2 3 sets in the blacks. So I think that is missing here, which kind of lacks the three dimensionality to your subject. One thing that I also noticed, maybe you have copied this from the reference photo, that this image is distorted. If you say that the front portion or this particular portion looks bigger, and whereas this portion and this portion is kind of distorted, it's because of that photograph. So I think that that's the pitfall or the drawback of drawing from a picture which is distorted. So one thing that you can definitely do is by adding some values. So if let's assume the point source or the main light source is falling from this direction, then if you see this is as a circle, a sphere is there, kind of top of the sphere. So there's a curve in the form. So if the light source is falling from this direction, there should be a range of values that can come over here. Also at the bottom, this portion can go dark. So I'll just try to put in some values. See, I know that the reference image that I'm using here is not as good as what it actually looks in the drawing that you have done, which I'll post on the top right or the left corner. But however, if the light source is coming from this direction, if the light is falling in this way, so this needs to go into shadow shape, which I will talk about in a couple of moments. Before I get there, one thing that I would like to also add as a critique here is, I see you have done faithfully many values, many details out here in this portion. Whereas if I can see that also you have fill in this very nicely and cleanly. But as you moved in this direction, I can clearly see that uh, it's a kind of scratches that you have done. Maybe you have lost your patience, or you kind of rushed it. So I would say, if let's say this painting has taken you approximately 4 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, 2 hours, whatever it is, depending on that, probably you can take a break of 15 minutes or 30 minutes, get back, get up from your seat, just go around, have some, spend some 5-10 minutes, and then just come back and start continuing from where you left it. That is how you can gain your patience and your focus again. Because I can see that you have put in a lot of efforts here, but whereas in here you lost your patience. So that's a very important thing that you can definitely work upon. Now, as let's get back to the values here. Even if you see this looks uh, kind of a flat 2D image. There's no three-dimensionality to this subject here. One thing that I can definitely add here is some values. If the light source is coming from this direction, think you see there is turn in the form, and since it's away from the light, this can again definitely go. Let me just try a different pencil out here. I think that's an B, which is causing a problem. Since this is against the light, some part of it can have those shadows. There's another thing that I want to point out here is, if you see there's a turn in the form, and you have done that very nicely with the help of these drawings. I can clearly see there's a turn in the form. However, the shadows are missing. Maybe your reference image did not have those shadows, but I think you can add them on your own. That is something an artist needs to do, since by adding few values here and there, it can give a nice three-dimensionality to your subject. Let's try some more shadow shapes here. I mean, definitely there are many things that some things are casting shadows, something as reflecting some shadows on there itself. But this is a very a brief critic, so let's not go into that deep details. But for now, I think this is a fair amount of improvements that you can definitely add, which will at least give a good three-dimensionality to your subject. See, now I have just added a few details, very few shadow shapes. Not, I have not added the entire value range here, but at least some values from here. So your subject kind of starts looking a three-dimensional, and that is something you can definitely work upon. So well, that's for you, Omkar. Thanks for sharing your image and giving me an opportunity to work on your subject. So our second critic is Rishi Senpai. Fortunately, I got the reference image as well. He has shared with me. Definitely, this looks much better in the image that he has shared compared to what I've taken as a printout. One thing that I would like to say is, maybe I'm not sure whether you have traced it or not. If you haven't traced this and you have kind of used a grid method, or if you have drawn this using some blocking method, this looks very good. And the outline, I think you have done a very good job out here. the same thing that applies here is the values. Now if you see that the nose section here, you see there's a turn in that form, and this plane, the side plane, is against the light, and hence it's against the light. It's going to cast some it's not going to cast a shadow, but it's in the shadow area, and so that part needs to come as a dark. So again, the improvement areas for you remains the same, that most of this that part here you have done here is the highlights. The good part that you have covered is the highlights, then some light values in slight of those middle values. So those are nice, that I would say here. One thing that I also liked here is that you have added a shadow, sorry, added a background out there. So adding that background gives a good three-dimensionality to your subject, since this kind of the head pops out, and it gives a good uh, roundness or to that form to your subject. So that's a really good thing that you have done here. And the improvement area that I would like to highlight here is, uh, you can still improve this drawing. I mean, there's a lot of process that's being involved here. There are some multiple stages going from light to dark, and then finally adding some details. Wherever you have stopped on the second, say second or third stage. See, I can see that you have added some good black values out here, but that needs to be added here as well. If you see this entire shape here, if the light source is coming from this direction, you see this portion of the nose, this plane of the nose is against the light, and that plane is in shadow, so that needs to be darkened. And likewise for this portion of the head, and again that uh, the bone here, which is the zygomatic bone, and this side of the plane, so that needs to be again uh, need to have that shadows. You see, currently it looks like a flat to me. If you see this nose, since the light source is directly falling from the top end, let me just do one thing. I'll slightly tilt this area. You see, there's a turn in the form. So to depict that turn in the form, and since this is against the light, you see there's a shadow shape. This doesn't look flat to me, but whereas what you have done here is, it looks kind of a flat to me. Let's say even if I add few bigger shapes for the shadow, I mean, the drawing looks very neat and clean to me. What it fails to depict are those shadow shapes from the globella to the side plane and some of here. Now I'll just go and blast in. I'll jot down some shadow shapes. Now if we notice, this is a gradient value that's falling out here. As soon as I add this one shape, one big shadow shape, it starts to look a three-dimensional subject on a flat two-dimensional paper. And that's exactly what you can do here. For now, I will ignore all uh, those let's say mid values and some lighter values out there. I'll just mark this as one big flat shadow shape. I can definitely go slow and make this gradient nice looking, but that's not my the whole motive of this critique here. See, this kind of gives a much better three-dimensionality to the subject. and definitely I can add more values to it. I mean, there are a number of steps that needs to be involved here, which can kind of gives me a good uh, range of values here. So once again, I think values is something that you need to work upon, and if that you can take care of, I think you will be very good at it. Thank you for sharing your images with me. The next critic is for Mahesh Harijan. I think this is a very good drawing. Uh, the things that I liked about this drawing is if I notice this particular illustration or that drawing here is it has good values in it, which kind of gives me a good impression of three dimensionality. You see, this drawing also looks very nice. It has a good proportions to it with nice relation between each other, and this entire looks as a one piece, which has done very nicely. I think uh, that's the first impression that I see here is I really like this portion out here. Talking about the improvement areas is I feel that you need to work upon the drawing that is being laid out here. One thing that you may have done is since this drawing has been cut from all these sides, the relationships that you need to have with each other is somewhat missing. Meaning, if I see that the face or the head that you're trying to draw here kind of gets very long on this side, and from here it kind of gets too long from here. If I compare the ear with the head, it appears to be small. The eye, if I compare with the head, looks to be a small one. So I think drawing is something that you need to take care of, and I think in this printout that part has been missing, whereas I see this white patches are been left out. That kind of gives a sense of blotchiness which doesn't look good on the subject. uh, Even on this beard part, the beard looks to be white and black, again white black white black. If that is the subject which you're trying to depict, it's good. But however, even if that is the case, based upon the light source that is falling on this subject, I feel the values are not being depicted correctly, especially in this area also. This clear segregation of white versus black. This looks as one different part from this drawing. If I see particularly this drawing is done into some smooth gradients, whereas this looks like a graphic design to me, where is a clean segregation of black and white, whereas this has some roundness to it. So blotchiness is something that try to avoid, and mostly I think you're relying on smudging this with the help of your finger or maybe some paper stumps or with a brush. So try not to rely heavily on them, and rather achieve those values first, and that could be at the very end where try to smudge them with the help of your finger or any blending tools. I think again the same thing is happening here is the values are being missing. Maybe it's because of the subject, but try to add your own creativity here, add your self-expression to this subject. If you know how the light and shadow plays a role in reality, try to depict that same into your subject, something which you have tried to do here. I think that's a very nice thing, though this has a clean white and black, but still it gives a very good impression of the depth to your subject by adding those black and white along, whereas here it fails to depict that three-dimensionality to your subject. I know I'm constantly repeating these words three dimensionality. It's all because the first thing I see, I notice this and I'm going to repeat them since that the first impression about it. Another thing that's a good example to show you here is if I see this is a cylinder. So if this is a cylinder and if a light source is falling from either of the directions, so since this is round or a curve, so some things needs to be black, some of this portion is causing highlight that needs to be white. Let me just grab a pencil out here. Okay, so if this portion is white, so that will have a highlight, a sharp highlight here. And this portion is against the light. You see, it starts making some sense in terms of the three-dimensional. Or even if I take on this portion, is highlight falling on this direction, then this portion needs to be in shadow completely, where no of I mean none of this design patterns will be able to see since it's directly in the shadow. This portion is again can go dark. The same thing applies here. Currently there's no values added here, and I can see a clear design pattern here. So I think that's what I have to say about this. But again, this is a really good picture or a drawing, and especially I like this form very much. Try to make more pictures or practice some of this that will help you to endeavor your head drawing or hair practicing. Thank you so much for submitting your entry. Next drawing that we have here is submitted by Sushila. As soon as I saw this picture, I think you have kind of expressed that moment very beautifully, uh, of you with your child, and that's a really nice thing that you have chosen as a subject, and you were able to depict that expression here very beautifully. The drawing looks okay to me. In terms of improvement areas, the first thing that I would like to tell you is when we see any subject in reality, for example, let's have a look at this cast. So apart from this, which is a sharp line, you see there's a lost and found edges over here. Then there's some shadow shapes which are not hard shadow shapes, but they are not sharp edges. They are kind of smooth edges here. Then again I can see again this is not very smooth, a little evident line here, but this looks a very crisp line here. So that is something that I would like to tell you in your drawing is I see a lot of outlines, those a clean outline for each and every parts of the head. I can see that's a clear line that you have put on each and every feature out there. So try to avoid that, since in reality there is no such thing called outline on the face. So I mean you can depict it, but at the some part of the features will have outlines, whereas some would not. They would rather have as edges, because in reality we do not see those outlines, we see edges. So that is something you can take care of by avoiding these outlines for each and every part. Second thing that I would like, I mean, to add my two senses. I feel that some of the, I mean, the drawings has gone off, especially into you see this lip portion here. Probably this could have been the shape. It's gone here out. Likewise, if you see this plane looks quite big and this one looks very smaller. So I don't have the reference image with me. However, I can tell you that this doesn't look convincing to me, the lips, especially in this area. Then second thing, I feel the eyes that has, since uh, the eyeballs are fit into the eye socket, and then that the flesh or that skin is wrapping around that eyeball. So there's a curvature here. So you need to add that into the drawing. If we take an example of this cast drawing here, you can see this. I mean, I know because of that light currently, maybe you're not able to see it, but what I'm trying to tell you here is see, there's a roundness, there's a curve here, and that is not being evident on either of this eyes. See here you did it very nicely and correctly, but on this side maybe, or on this side, it doesn't look quite evident. It looks more of a flat drawing. Another thing that I would like to highlight here is instead of drawing those each and every scratchy lines for the hair, probably you can group them, or grouping them will definitely help instead of drawing all those small lines. They kind of look very unfinished, or rushed up things. So if you can draw them in one big shape, it still looks very convincing and believable to the eye that those are hair. You see, this looks one shape out here instead of those scratchy lines out there. Another thing that I would like to highlight here is the values are missing. Most, I mean, there are some darker shades, dark values out there. There are some highlights. There are some light values, very few middle values. But most of the value range that I see are not been addressed here. So that is something you can definitely work upon. Again, if uh, this head, I mean, there's a portion beneath the head on this neck area. So this the chin would be definitely casting some shadow on this portion. So those details can be taken care of. If you do not add the values, it's gonna lack three-dimensionality. Again, I can see this the ring here. It's being a circle, or it's a round here. And if the light source is coming from one point direction, then some portion will be exposed to the light where some will be away from the light. So that needs to be taken care accordingly. Currently, the hair looks one flat shape. Some part of the light would be falling on the hair. Currently, this looks unfinished rather than looking as an highlight. So if this is your highlight, maybe you can add more value here, and this can be a little lighter. And likewise for the face, you need to add more values here. So I think that's the feedback for your drawing. Again, I definitely liked the expression that you have tried to capture for that moment. It's really good. Some few enhancements will definitely uh, boost the drawing. Thanks for sharing your image and giving me this opportunity. So another drawing that has been submitted by Amit Shrevasta. The first thing that I noticed about this is you have added a background which lifts the head quite nicely. That is something I really liked about it. Also, most I know this looks kind of very shabby. It's because of that poor print, whereas the actual image has been shared looks much nicer than this. It's kind of looks washed out. However, coming back to the point, uh, the areas that you have left out for this beard, which is white, so that gives me a good sense of that the beard is white and not any other color. So that's one thing you have really achieved it. Now this looks at a very initial stage. Maybe this looks to me like a first stage. So as I mentioned earlier, there are different stages and multiple layers at multiple stages. You have not added more values or not applied many strokes here. It just looks washed out. The first and the most important thing is avoid using this shabby edges here. There should be a clear segregation between the background and the head. So for example, if I'm drawing this, let there be a clear separation between your subject. At some edges, if you want, you can merge them with the subject, since there could be only a one light source that is falling from one end, and and in some instances the background do blend with your subject, but here it looked like uh, there is no separation between the background and the subject. So some part can definitely be given a hard edges, whereas some can follow a softer edges which is lost into the background. Second thing that you can do is pay attention to your drawing. I mean, you can spend more time on drawing and jot down those features by connecting the lines. Currently, it looks like an incomplete shape. There's one line here and there's another line here. I know there's one more line here, but it kind of looks left out. It doesn't complete that shape. You need to complete those lines and look it and make it look like one single shape. So you have to kind of pay attention to your drawing. Again here, if I notice this section, the lips, then this mustache and the beard, they kind of blend all together, which could not be the case. There could be some separation of the mustache here, then the lips could be evident. I'm not asking you to draw some strict outlines. I'm asking you to complete the shape which could have a soft, hard edges depending upon the light patterns, the shadow patterns. And not like this where you just have a strict outline. If this is the hairline that's been attached, so that needs to be completed. So I think you need to first is you need to take care of the drawing very carefully. Then second is make this shapes complete. Third and the last step would be to apply the range of values that I see missing here. Currently, it looks to me the values that only fall from 1 to 3 and not beyond that. There are only very few parts in which you have kind of used middle values. And even for the background, you see there's some blotchiness is being there's some white areas that can have some nice gradation, nice value. One good tonal value instead of leaving those white patches. That looks much better in terms of one value. So even if you now compare this side versus this, I see there's a dark patch here, then again a light patch. So avoid losing these patches, avoid leaving these patches out here and complete them. So that's what uh, I have to say for this drawing. Another entry is submitted by Gaurav Sharma. The first thing that I liked about it represents to me like in done with a nice artistic flavor to it. Instead of having those sharp outlines, it looks very nice artistic to me, where it has some rich dark values as well as some highlights that has been added in this portion, whereas there are some middle values. So if we take this as highlight, this middle values and dark values, so I think those values are being achieved here. So this looks much nicer to me. It it gives a three-dimensionality look and feel to the subject. That is something I liked about this drawing here. Talking about the improvement areas, I also remember you speaking about that no matter how much you try to draw that subject, you fail to make it look as the way it should look. Talking about that improvement areas is one thing I feel is there's a lack of drawing here. The relationships between the features and the head is missing. Now, first thing is you can definitely uh, start drawing, that is approximates of that height, what is the height and the length, and start following that big envelope without getting into those details, and then gradually, try to construct this figure by adding this vertical line where it can give you the left and right, then adding that brow line. So that is something, when you add that, you can definitely match these lines up. And you see, when I add these lines, this one eye is going above the line, the other eye is almost sitting on that line and falling below that line. So by adding these guided lines, it helps you to determine where those features actually lie. This is, you need to observe carefully in your subject and depict that into your drawing. And that is something when you will start achieving that likeness of the head that you're trying to copy. Okay, so I think once you can definitely do, what you can do is try practicing only the eye. Okay, once you feel that confident enough that you're able to draw that eye correctly, maybe you can jump into the second exercise, that is drawing two eyes simultaneously following this guided lines approach. Third thing is you can draw eyes, along with that you can start drawing nose. So eyes and nose, and then you try to check the relationship between each other, whether that is making sense to you or not. And then gradually you can keep on adding those other features and finally completing the head. That way you will improve a lot. Another thing that I would like to tell here is, maybe stop or maybe avoid doing this just unwanted or left out lines. They don't add any value to your drawing. They just looks like it has been left out. Instead of adding those just random lines, maybe can add big strokes here that makes complete sense to your composition, instead of just leaving them out. And again, this portion looks left out to me. One thing again I liked about this is grouping of that hair, which is nicely done. You see, there's a lot of one full shape of that hair, instead of adding that fine scratchy lines. So that gives a good impression of that bulk. But in some cases, I think it's being left out. So if that can be taken care of, then it's a very good thing that you can improve to a next level. Other thing that I also liked was, you added this few lines, those white highlights. They are giving a very nice approach to your drawing. However, in some cases or in some instances, they look off to me, because the hair is falling in this direction, in all directions, whereas I can see, due to the gravities, the hair is falling on this direction, whereas the lines are going here and there. So those scratchiness can be avoided. Do very minimum, like 3 to 4 lines here, small lines that goes with the rhythm of the hair, instead of just adding here and there. So here it looks very believable to me, whereas this portion kind of doesn't look good to me. So yes, this is a really good drawing, and it looks very. I think you're going in the correct direction, and practicing few more will definitely help you out. So thanks for submitting. Another drawing that we have here is from Ashu Tiwari. I think you have put lot of efforts into this, and this has come out a really good piece. In terms of the three dimensionality, it looks very nice and very cleaner. You have blocked in all those shadow shapes very beautifully. Then there are some good nice middle values, and again the drawing itself looks very beautiful to me. Coming to the improvement areas, I feel the drawing looks little off to me in terms of the features, the head shape. Especially if I notice this portion, this kind of looks distorted to me. The first thing that I would tell you is if I compare this falls very down. His left eyebrow looks in upward direction, and if I compare this kind of, you see there is a big gap here, and if I divide the head in the middle, the lips kind of looks going in this direction, whereas they should fall in this direction. It's Let's draw one more guideline that should come like this, and then this one. If I compare this with the tear duct and this one, you see it's this lips is going in this. It's placed in this direction. Rather, it should be this can come along here, maybe somewhere here. Another thing is that it is going in the upward direction, which is not the case. I think this angle needs to be corrected. Other thing that I noticed is I can see there's a it's not because of the jawline, but this shape looks very flat to me, whereas this side of the plane has bulge to it. So this evident shape can be less evident. It can be taken slightly inwards. I mean very slightly. Yeah, I think that can be taken care of in terms of the drawing. I think this has gone way off, and especially the mouth part. Second thing that I would like to highlight here is the hair needs to be drawn as one big shape instead of adding those scratchy lines. So this can be done into good uh, one form that gives bulk or adds weight rather than having that uh, defining out all that one single hair. That is something you can definitely look upon. The other thing that I noticed here is if I see that this portion here, so you have done this very nicely and very beautifully in terms of you see this crease, there's a hard definition, whereas here there's a very subtle, I can see there's a gradation in the form, whereas in this areas this looks very hard to me. Those are very sharp edges on all these creases, which I don't think would be. There could be some slight gradation here that needs to follow. So that needs to be taken care. For example, see if this highlight has been left out very nicely, very beautifully, whereas this one looks very sharp. And since I can see that the light source is following in this direction, some part would be in the light, whereas some could be against the light. Likewise, the design patterns that you have added here, they are amazing. I really like them. However, this is against the light, so I can see there's a deep shadow out here. So this needs to go off. Only the portion that is in the highlight or which is exposed to the light will be visible, whereas these ones will not be visible. For example, here they won't be visible in in this area, whereas the ones that have been exposed to the light, they are visible. So that is something you need to take care of. Other thing that I noticed, or what I would like to tell you is, I see there is two separate parts here. One is this entire head, and second is the body part. They kind of don't look of one family, they look different here. If I compare this, it doesn't have those shadow shapes or those middle values, whereas this area has all range of values. If I compare with our value scale, most of those values are been addressed here, whereas it fails to address here. It's only the light and the darks. There should be a gradation that needs to follow in most of these areas that are not come good. I think you need to take care of those lights and shadow shapes. I can see there's clear two different drawings here. This portion, whereas this portion. Maybe I think again you kind of rushed here, which I forget to mention. Maybe patience is something that you need to have and keep on doing it. That same thing applies for the hair. I think you can still go back to this drawing and make those changes. It will add much value to your drawing. It will at least give maybe 20 to 30% more three-dimensionality to your subject. And again, adding that background can definitely help. But definitely, this is a very good piece, and I really liked it. Keep it up, and I think you're on the right track. Just try to take care of this, the drawings and the value shapes, and you are good to go. Another drawing that we have here is Bernard Kelly Mohammad. I'm not sure whether I pronounced it correctly or not, but thanks for sharing this image. And also, I can see there's a reference image that has been shared here. One thing that I really liked is the likeness of the subject has come really good, and most of the values and shadow shapes that you have addressed looks believable to the eye, and it looks good. It looks correct in the way they need to be depicted. Few improvement areas that I still feel needs to be worked upon is the first and the most importantly is the drawing. I think this kind of got distorted here. And before we go talk about the distortion, I think the length of the head it's much bigger compared to the actual reference image. This needs to be shortened. So if I compare from here, you see the eyes, this the bottom part of that eye versus this a lot of distance here. Not at least lot, but a noticeable distance that I can see here. And again, this portion has gone too big, and it looks kind of off here. So I'll explain you how. In this complete reference, it looks as a parallel. If I draw some parallel lines, see this brow line, eye line, nose line, this they look parallel to me. Whereas in this case, if I draw the brow line, the bottom part of the eyes, then this nose, and then the chin. You see, it is going in this single point, and it looks distorted. This portion has gone quite big, I think. So drawing is something that you need to take care of. Other thing that I noticed here is the shadow shapes are missing. For example, this portion of the reference image, if I compare, I think this can have the shadow shape which needs to be dominating. You see, this needs to have a defined shadow shapes since it's against the light. It's away from the light. So that kind of starts giving a much depth to the drawing. And this portion has more of this looks like a flat to me because has the same value across the shape, whereas if I follow the reference image, this portion seems to be lighter to me. So let me just put that uh, white charcoal. So don't go with my drawing because I'm not trying to patiently do it. What I'm trying to show you or highlight here is how this can make, you see, it starts making some sense to me in terms of depicting that three dimensionality to the subject. Again, few shadow shapes I feel that are missing on this particular area. These and especially there are some uh, blotchiness that I can see on this part, then this part of the nose tip, and again the cheekbone. By looking at the drawing, it looks like they are highlights, but they are not the highlights. They can fall into value range of 8 or 9. It will have some value to it, but it will not have as a white. So that is something you need to be very careful about while depicting, because if you put it as white, they tend to look blotches. Another thing that I would like to add here up is when there is a, a very occlusion shadow or a very dark shadow. So this is going in this direction. So maybe that the light source is falling here. So this needs to have some light and some value that is lighter, and it gradually appears to be dark. Currently, this has gone one value patch, which looks very odd. It needs to have darker as it goes inside and lighter on this edge, something like this. It will be not one single patch. It will be always a smooth transition or gradation depending upon the light, how that light is following, how the light follows. But in this case, you see, it starts making some sense in terms of three dimensionality versus looking that flat. So I think these are the few improvement areas that you can definitely work upon. I can also see that this portion here, the bandana that he's wearing, uh, it tends to look flat here, but maybe I can add my 2 cents here since the head is this plane is flat, whereas there are some uh, a form that is following through the head, so that can have slightly darker areas, a transition, a smooth gradation. See that starts bringing your picture out, starts giving the sense of a depth to your drawing instead of drawing that. So that is something definitely you can add up as an artist, which your camera can or the reference image can fail to portray. So I think that's the improvement areas from mine. And again, thanks for sharing this reference image. Now coming to the final critic of our episode, last but not the least, that is shared by K. Rabindranath Senapati. Yeah, the thing that I liked about this subject is again this kind of portrait depicts the three dimensionality by adding the values correctly. A good understanding of the subject, that it has some rich values within it. I can clearly make out that the hair is white in color and the person out here is of a certain age. So I think you kind of addressed all the points and achieved the sense or the look and feel of the subject or the head that you're trying to draw here. So this is a one good one fine drawing, I would say. Talking about the improvement areas, sorry, before I move to the improvement areas, I can clearly see that this portion is of one big shape that has been used and not each and every dot, that fine scratchy line. So that is something I really liked about here. So that same thing you can apply to the other parts of the hair and the face features. So coming back to the improvement areas, drawing is something that you can definitely take care of. The eye looks kind of out to me. Again, if I draw those parallel lines here, this falls below that line and the shape itself looks kind of off to me. Instead of having uh, that round form to the eye that we just talked about, the cast reference that we had, is you see there's a round, but currently this shape looks off to me. Instead of having here like this, maybe it can, the tear duct can follow from here and it will go inside like this. So that is something you need to take care of in terms of drawing. And as I was talking earlier, you need to also take care of this hard edges that have been applied here. Not the entire edge would be hard. I know in some cases it will be, but you kind of manipulate it the way you want to depict it and not what the references is trying to show you. You can definitely play around and add your knowledge here and apply to it. I think drawing is something that uh, will help you in terms of this can come inside. And again, for the cheekbone, maybe I think this kind of looks off to me. The plane that is adding is too much narrow here. Maybe that can be improved or improvised. Again, you can check with the relationship data. So if I draw the line from the tear duct, so where does the end of this sit? Talking about this parallel lines. So do these lines are actually parallel to each other or are they falling apart? So that needs to be taken care of. Maybe what you have tried to do here is correct with in terms of the length and the width, but when you gradually go inside, so you can draw this guidelines, make a mark accordingly, see where they apply and how they relate with each other, where that cheekbone is. Does it fall exactly here or is it coming here? And in terms of the neck, where does the neck sit here and where does this, is it too sharp or is it really rounded off? That needs to be taken care of. I think drawing is something that you need to really look upon, and the values is something that you need to take care of. I see there are too many highlights that are being added on the subject. Uh, it's highlight on the hair, it's highlight on the eyes, um, on the forehead, then on the chin area, on ear, on the nose tip. So try to avoid that. Really see for the highlights and the other values, and rest looks really fine to me. uh, just just the drawing is something that you can take care of. So thank you for sharing this, and appreciate you all guys for sharing your images and getting and giving me a chance to review them, to critique them. Stay tuned and let's see how or what we can do in our next session. So thanks once again.